Okay, welcome everyone to the community call for July. I am Amarachi Johnson Oba, and I am the community manager here at Veramo. And of course, you can see I'm joined by my teammates, Mercia, Nick, and Simon. As usual, we are going to be running through a couple of things from our agenda, which includes community updates, technical updates, and a special segment featuring the team from Spherity, Lauritz and Philipp, and they're already here. Thank you very much. And of course, we are going to have an open discussion segment at the end of their session and also a Q&A. So if you have any questions regarding their presentation or you have something else you just want to discuss in this call, just keep them ready and handy. We are going to have an open discussion segment at the end of the call. So I'm quickly going to get started on the community updates. And one of the things that I want to share is this. Let me quickly share my screen. So we have, oh, how do I make this go away? I always struggle with this, where the recording bar kind of blocks my tab, and then I have to struggle with getting it to go away.
I think it has like a little tab that you can pull to the side, but I have like always the exact same problem in Zoom as well. I think you can like move it to the left side or to the right side a bit, but that's about it.
Okay, let me see. Oh, it worked. Okay, great. So we have this new article on our blog here titled Veramo and DITCOM Bringing Identity to AI, which was written by Nick Reynolds. It's a very nice read that shares how decentralized identity can be used to combat some of the risks that artificial intelligence poses. And it's a very great read, and there is also a video version of the article. So I encourage everyone to read, share, and share your thoughts with us on Discord. We would like to know what you think about this article. So I'm going to quickly hand over to Mercia now for our technical updates. All right, there you go, Mercia.
Hey, folks. Yeah, so technically we should have already released Veramo 5.3, but we had an issue with the release automation. So that's, I hope, has been fixed now. I'm waiting for the build to finish. And that will add, we have a number of features and fixes in this release. Most of it's coming actually from you guys, our awesome community. So we have a new KV store plugin, a key value store plugin that's usable in like all parts of the code base. It's not like a top level Veramo plugin. And yeah, thanks Neil from Spherity for that one. Now you can also like choose the key you want to sign your credentials with in case the issuer has multiple keys that match. That's thanks to Arnold from LTO Network. And also from him, we have a fix allowing Veramo to work better with Universal Resolver. Also, we're supporting SecP 256R1 keys for JWT signing. Thanks to Martin from Blockchain Lab UM, or should I say Masca? And yeah, from the same folks, we have some fixes for credentials using the IP712 signatures, and also supporting public key JWK comparisons when working with blockchain account IDs. So after this release, we'll have immediately following another release with some big changes to the DITCOM package. That's supposed to bring support for the mandatory and recommended encryption algorithms, which were missing up to this point in Veramo. So hopefully that will bring us up to spec, or if not up to spec, like very close to the actual DITCOM spec. Yep, that's it. Thanks, folks, and keep it coming.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcia. Thanks for that update. So without further ado, I'll quickly hand over to Lauritz and Philipp from Spherity to take us through Drug Supply Chain Security Act and, of course, a demo of CARO. I'm so excited to see a demo of CARO actually. So over to you, Lauritz and Philipp.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so I will just quickly introduce myself, and then I will give it over to Philipp, just for the general structure. Yeah, my name is Lauritz Leifermann. I'm working at Spherity as a product/software engineer, and I'm building CAO. I think the majority of the team is actually in this call as well. So, like, if we have questions at the end, like the right people in the room here to answer these. Yeah.
Yeah, what can I say? My name is Philipp, and I'm also a software engineer at Spherity. Yeah, doing all the cool things that I can there.
Yeah, and today we want to talk about decentralized identity in US healthcare, and what we are doing with our product CAO at Spherity. Yeah, and I guess we can just jump straight into it. But before we can talk about what CAO actually is and what we use, like what Veramo functionalities we actually use, we need to talk about the DSCSA law that basically creates the product market fit that CAO is using. And DSCSA is a law that has been enacted, I think is the correct saying in English, in I think 2013 by the Obama administration, and it's an abbreviation for Drug Supply Chain Security Act, and basically the gist of it is the US has a problem. I don't want to say big problem, but has a problem with counterfeit drugs getting resold in like wholesaling applications, and generally drug packages getting stolen. Like it's also a problem in other countries, I believe. I believe here in Germany we had this problem as well, but our government doesn't do as much against it, I believe. So what's happening in the US is that, you know, people steal packages, and then like just imagine you have some, you know, medications for cancer, and someone replaces with like cheaper medication or medication that does not work at all, and then sells it to you, and you take this, you know, you take these drugs and think, you know, cancer might be healed or medicated in some way, but actually the medication you're taking doesn't actually do anything, because the whole supply chain from manufacturing to repackaging to wholesaling isn't secured at all. And that was the idea of the US government to create this law, or that was the idea of the Obama administration to create this law to stop counterfeit drug exchanges and supply and secure this supply chain, and make it really hard for someone from the outside to basically manipulate the supply chain to do some malicious actions there. So we wrote down the 3 main points here, what the law is trying to do, and that is stop counterfeit drug exchanges, enable product tracking and tracing, and that means that I can exactly track, I have some piece of drug, and I can exactly track, okay, this package was in the hands of this repackaged, like it was delivered to this wholesaler, and it was created from these ingredients, like the full life cycle of a drug, that you can track it. And the last basic goal of this, which I think is the most important one, is improve patient safety. So that's what I mentioned at the start, is that you can be sure if you take medications that what you're taking there actually helps you and is not some fake drug that doesn't have any effects. I believe if you like Google this, there are like some big headlines in the last couple of months where they were like really $1 billion operations uncovered with like drug rings that were very deep in the supply chain. And I think it was ibuprofen or something they faked that you could buy like at very big wholesaling chains. And if you took these things, it was just, I think, just like some random drug that you took. It wasn't even with any medication in there. So yeah, the goal really is to improve patient safety here at the end. Yeah, so that's in a very short time what DSCSA is and what it tries to achieve. And this law basically created a timeline for everyone in the pharma industry to say, okay, until 2023, until the end, you need to do additional things in order to stay compliant and avoid fees from the FDA and other pharma regulatory bodies in the US. And that's where we come in. So pharma companies now have the problem, of needing to stay compliant to secure this supply chain. And now we come in as a product and say, hey, I think we can achieve this with SSI. And that's basically where this whole SSI component comes in. So if you think about this, like supply chain and having a drug package that says what it is, that having a drug package in your hand that you can scan maybe and then understand, okay, it really is ibuprofen or something. This is a very good use case for SSI actually, and for W3C credentials, and that's what we are using here. So at the core of CARO and at the core of the OCI, which I will talk about like in a couple of minutes, is that we try to solve this problem with W3C credentials and SSI at the core. So we want to combat counterfeit vendors by saying, hey, every interaction between vendors now requires some exchange of credentials that are signed by parties that basically verify that you are actually an actor in the system, which you pretend to be. So obviously, before all of this, before the DSCSI, there also have been licenses, but most of the time you don't have like cryptographically signed licenses, and some vendors even didn't really require them. So what the idea of this is now that we introduce the pharma ecosystem to this and say, hey, there's this cool new tech called SSI and credentials, and we can use this to basically credentialize your licenses and make it really easy to exchange to someone else that you actually have a license. And that's basically it at the core of it. So what we did about like over the past couple of years was to create the OCI, which will come to on the next slide if you want to change slides. Yeah. And that's the Open Credentialing Initiative. And it's basically a large working group that we put together with multiple companies that are working together to build an ecosystem of open standards that build on top of the W3C standards to create an ecosystem for exchanging credentialized information for this DSCSA Act. And it includes a lot of things already. We have like a GitHub, everything is public. We try to mimic how a W3C would work, like in the same way. We have like meetings that everybody can join, you can chime in, we have public issues that you can like write in, and this regulatory body basically dictates a couple of conformance criteria that we adhere to and other people that want to be part of this adhere to as well. So biggest part of this is a digital wallet conformance criteria that basically dictates on what a wallet needs to do, how it should store keys, what endpoints it needs to have, and so forth. And a very important part of this pharma ecosystem here is something called a VRS, and it's a abbreviation for verification routing system. And you can basically imagine this like the yellow pages for the pharma ecosystem. So if, let's say I'm a wholesale company, yeah, and I want to send Philip, who's also, maybe Philip is a repackager or Philip is also a wholesaler, and I want to sell him some drugs, yeah. But I don't know how to reach Philip. So I do this via my verification routing system, basically. So there are very big vendors out there who play yellow pages for pharmacists and for the pharma ecosystem. And that's basically how this information between two parties is fully exchanged. So very rarely you actually have two companies directly talking to each other. You almost always have them talking through these VRS with each other. So there's a very large GS1 standard as well that explains how pharma companies talk to each other via the VRS standard. And that's the rule book that we play by. We are not trying to abolish this this system. If you look through this and try to start to understand this, you might see, wow, you could fully replace VRS systems with SSI, did communication. But these guys have a very big very big market share as well, and they want to be part of the system. So this is staying for a long time anyhow. So just as a preface here, because in understanding the importance of a VRS in this system is pretty important to understanding what exactly we are exchanging and what our APIs are doing. So if two parties exchange information, it's always one VRS asking a wallet, getting information, getting a presentation, and then transmitting that via VRS, and then verifying that at another wallet, at another VRS. So that's basically how the general flow works. And we at the OCI try to standardize this to the VRS systems and say, hey, we have standards that you can use to use credentialized exchanges to this. And we have like a resource page at the end where you can look through if you are like interested what like the VRS conformance criteria is doing, or credential issuer conformance criteria. And like really invite everyone to take a look. We need more people with SSI knowledge to look at this. Yeah, that's basically about everything I can tell you about the DSCSA Act and what the OCI is doing in that sense. And now CARO comes in. So that's basically the whole story before this. And now our product comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Lauritz has given a very good overview over, what the core problem is, how SSI can tackle it, and how we have, as Spherity and like other companies in the ecosystem also decided not to cook their own soup, but sit together in like a standardization body and come together, build something together, and get the dice actually rolling. And with this, everything in regards, we also have to now think about actually making this possible, about implementing it in an actual digital wallet like we do at Spherity. And actually the idea of now using Veramo as like the core for our SSI product, is previous, like it was done before I joined Spherity. So I joined in March of last year, and there was already like a CARO there in a very young state with Veramo in it. But for me, it was perfect. I came directly from university. I was writing my master thesis on SSI, trying out Meta, Trinsic, Azure AD, or now Entra, if you want to call it that way, and of course Veramo as well. And I really liked working with Veramo back then. So I was really happy to see, CARO, actually a cool product being, being created using some open source libraries. And if you look like with a with a microscope into the CARO code base, we can see that Veramo is used in a lot of spaces or a lot of places. First of all, of course, like the full wallet lifecycle and storage. So that includes a creation of credentials, of verified credentials, of verified presentations, like of course of JSON ID and JOT as well. We see the creation of DIDs as well in there, resolving, updating DIDs. Of course, like the whole credential life cycle, like beyond issuance, of course, the revocation and stuff like that as well. Storage, key storage for like DIDs, where do we store private keys? Currently, we use like KMS local, or whatever it's called in Veramo. Looking into the future, of course, we want to extend this and go to like a actual KMS provider where we can, store the secret keys for the time being. Yeah, as I said, credential issuance for like our endpoints and via our integrated partners like Legism, we also do via Veramo, and we're currently working on steering the OCI into a direction of using our ERC-based or ERC 5039-based revocation mechanism. Currently, it's using like an LDAP-based revocation mechanism. We kind of want to steer the OCI into going away from this LDAP thing, this very centralized thing, to something more decentralized and more resilient. But that's a process, I guess, that comes with standardization bodies. Yeah, and as I said, like presentation generation and verification, like Lauritz will probably show you a Swagger UI in like a few minutes, where you can see the actual endpoints that are being called by the VRS providers to generate presentations and verify presentations. So of course we use Veramo for that, and all the checks that are included with that. Another cool thing, I think this is amazing, up until that point, we just use the base usage or the base capabilities of Veramo, but I think the very powerful thing that Veramo offers us as Spherity is that we can easily extend it by writing our own plugins or actually modifying already existing plugins. So we saw that with a topic that came up was we wanted to anchor service endpoints, or we wanted to rotate keys on our DID Ether DIDs. And, we want to do this as a platform. So what we needed to do, what we need to do, meta transactions. And the libraries or the plugins didn't have that, so we had to build that. That was pretty cool as well, like working with the Veramo team on that and getting the import on how to make this as cool as possible. So that was pretty cool. Another thing that is more recent, we kind of want to build like DIDCOM support into our platform, and we already did this. with a Veramo Arias plugin that is like in a pretty young stage, but still you can do some Arias flows through that as well. That might be interesting for the future of OCI and how we exchange credentials between trading partners in our ecosystem as well. Yeah, so you can see, we use base powers of Veramo. We can extend it very easily. It gives us so many possibilities. And of course, I could talk more about it, but I think it's much easier to just give you like a quick tour of CARO and show you what we actually have built based on Veramo. So this is the front end of CARO. You can see we have some things on the sidebar that are available to users on our platform or for companies on our platform. You can see this VRS interactions part. You've probably heard of VRS now from Lauritz and me. So this is where we're going to go in a few seconds. We have our enterprise wallet part where we store identifiers and credentials. Trading partners, where you get a quick overview over with whom you exchanged presentations with. Of course, user management, if you want to invite somebody into your CARO tenant, into your CARO account. Activity log, pretty cool for compliance, to see, okay, somebody created an identifier here or somebody opened like billing information. And of course, some settings we hide here for security, billing, and see the service providers that connected to your account. So as far as I can remember, we want to give you like a small demo as well. So as you can see, I'm currently on the identifiers page. We have two identifiers here, both of them did Ether Girly. And I think the most interesting part is just showing you how we request actually credentials. So we go to our credentials page and you can see we already have a set of credentials, but those are for one of the identifiers. And just to showcase you on how to acquire a new set of credentials, I'm going to request one for one of the DIDs that don't have any credentials yet, which is the tested here above. So I just select that enterprise identifier. We call it that way. It's nicer for business people. And then the next step, we can select what kind of credential we want. So you can see we offer two kind of credentials to request from: identity and ATP credential. I'm not going to go into more detail, but the only thing you need to know is you have to have an identity credential first, and then you can request an ATP credential. But for that demo, we are only going to request an identity credential.
This is also important. Maybe we can quickly add another sentence here that these two credential types, this is also part of what the OCI standardizes and what the OCI dictates, what every wallet needs to implement. So right now, there are only two credential types: identity and DSC's ATP credential. First one being a credential that explains what you are. I have a company called Lauritz Pharma or whatever. And the DSCSA ATP credential is actually a credential that represents that I have a valid state license and I'm allowed to operate in whatever I'm doing. So that's split into two credential types. And hardcore SSI people now might say, you could have used one credential for this, but there are different reasons why we use it, why the OCI decided to use two for these. So as of right now, there are two credentials, but we are talking about more in the future here as well. Yeah.
Yep, and for those credential types in the future, the identity per credential will be as well the basis. So that's why, it's already here. Yep. So as I said, we're going to request an identity credential for the time being. And in the next step, we can actually select an issuer. So in the future, you might think of, okay, CARO is like a platform for multiple issuers, and each issuer is focused on a specific credential type that they issue to trading partners. Maybe because they are only allowed to issue specific credentials. They have processes and accreditations in the background that only allows them to do specific issuances. And for our demo purposes, this is actually something cool that Lauritz and Dennis worked on and built, is an ACME demo issuer. And I'm going to select it, and you will see if I click on acquire new credential, we will be sent to the front end of this credential issuer. So we are now not in CARO anymore. We are at a website of the credential issuer. And in here, you can input a lot of information. In our case, those are very general, legal name and country. But in some cases, you might as well upload some digital certificates that you have that prove that you are a specific a specific company, or you have you're allowed to do some special exchanges of drugs, and so you get a special credential for that.
If you want to compare this process to something that and that probably everyone already did here, is if you open a bank account, you most of the time also need to verify your ID card, right? So you open a bank account and then you get redirected to some third-party site, which is often like a verifier, third-party verifier. And then you need to hold your like little ID card in there, need to do a video and show that it like reflects and is holographic. That is exactly the same thing what the credential issuer is in our use case here. So credential issuer is some third party that where you upload an authorized company documentation and that they accreditize to you, hey, we checked this company is actually valid and they have a correct license. And that's what the credential issuer is doing in the OCI, basically. So, and we built a demo thing for here just to clarify it, because I think in the pharma use case, this can be a little bit abstract, but just to, get everyone on the same line, that this, probably everyone has done this already, like with a bank account or anything else that requires that you show your ID information somewhere online, I guess.
Yeah, perfect. So we fill out everything in the form at the third party and we just click save information. And in that moment, the issuer is saving all the information and the issuer is sending us back to CARO. And, you might think, okay, this is like, in this case here, it was like an instant process, right? But in the real world, this is something that might take days. And like maybe sometimes the issuer has some questions and requests some more data from you. So for that purpose, we have in CARO the thing called credential requests, where you have an overview over the kind of credential that you've requested, and as well an overview over the process of, how far you are in the process, or if you're already done or whatever. And this way is like this provides like an easy way to use on our platform to request credentials, but also have an overview of, how far am I in the application process and the requesting process of actually getting my credential. Yeah, in this case, because it's like a demo setup, of course, the issue anymore, and they just gave us that identity credential we requested, and you can see it as well with credential issued as being like the last step in the process. And if we go back to the credentials page, we see we now have at the top here the credential that we just requested like 2 minutes ago. And I think the next step will be pretty interesting because Lauritz will showcase on how to use that credential now to, create a presentation and exchange it with like another party via like the VRS network.
Yeah, exactly. So what Philipp has shown now is basically what every customer needs to do when they first are onboarded on our platform. So you create an account here, you purchase our plans, you get account. So what you do then is you actually, instead of using the ACMA issuer, something we just built for demo purposes, you upload your information to a partner called Legisym, which is exactly the same way integrated that you just saw. So I think we talked about this at the last IAW or the IAW before that, which I believe like showing someone on how a credential is actually acquired is pretty hard UX-wise, and like how you communicate that and what's still required, and that's where we built this dedicated UI for this. And once you have like your credential acquired, your VS provider, which is connected to you on CARO, can actually start using your credentialized information, get like generate presentations and use that then in information exchanges in his network. And that's something which I will show now on how that normally works with like API call really quick. I guess you just have to end the screen share. I'm not sure if I can also do it at the same time. I think it works. Never mind. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what I can show you now is I have a little bigger sidebar than what Philipp has, as you can see, because we have like a centralized user management, and I'm an admin user right now, so I can see multiple things. It's like a multi-tenant application. And I'm in the ACMA VRS here, so that's like our test VRS provider that we use for internal tests. And I can see that the Veramo demo, the tenant that Philipp is in, actually has a new identifier here that we can see here. That I can now use for my interactions with the VRS network. So VRS providers are on board our platform as service providers for our customers and credential issuers as well. So it's like one big cloud of people providing services for our customers in our platform itself. So if I now want to generate a presentation, I just have to call an API, which is standardized in the OCI as well. It's verified presentations generate. And this is the same for every wallet. So we have this API wallet from Ledger domain, same API as well. So what I do now is I basically say, hey, I'm logged in, by the way. I did that before. Oh, wait, I actually not. I'll just quickly copy my token here. So let me just quickly log in. Wait, I'm logged in. Never mind. So what I'm doing now is I will generate a presentation. So I can just call this endpoint and say, hey, for this DID of my customer, please generate me a presentation for the identity credential, and also give it a unique ID for the exchange. That's a big part of VRS exchanges, and it very hard to understand if you're not super into it. It's a very big complication, but I quickly explain it. Like every exchange between two VRS systems always is exactly uniquely identified by a UUID before, and that's something they call correlation UUID. That has to be unique per transaction. That allows us, this ID basically allows us to identify what kind of communication happened at what like place and group things together. You will see that later when Philipp shares the screen again. So what I can now do is call this API, and what I get is this standardized response, which basically tells me, hey, yeah, you were able to generate a presentation from this, which is in JWT format like this. And this is only in JWT format because in that way, it's easier to transport in the APIs that the VRS now use to communicate with each other. So what the VRS would now do is they would take this out here. They copy this out, or like automatically, obviously, take this out and now use this in a communication to verify it at another VRS. So this is something we can now emulate. So let's just pretend I'm a VRS. I copy this one out, and now this information is transmitted via the network and reaches another VRS, which now has to verify that information as well. And I can do this via the verify endpoint. I can just set in like a little verify presentation thing in here. And I need to select the verifier DID, which I want to verify this with. Actually, let me quickly choose one from the tenant. Like this. Let's see if I'm actually a customer. Might be that it worked. So yeah, as you can see, we now got back from the API, from our CARO. Yes, hey, the verified presentation that you inputted there is actually correct. And now a couple of checks have been done. So this basically solves the problem of two companies exchanging information with each other and basically requiring that the information is first of all correct, comes from a trusted source, and it's not outdated. There are like a couple of checks being like that are done here, and a lot of them I will probably forget. So there's a lot of checks being done here. First of all, being that this whole thing can't be older than 5 minutes. So normally this is transmitted instantly between two parties. Also, the issuer of this credential that lives in this presentation here in JWT format also needs to be a trusted issuer, for example, which that's something we handle like on a smart contract. And there's like a lot of different checks that we do as well, that basically all dictated in the OCI that make sure that if information is exchanged, yes, okay, two companies can make sure, okay, Lauritz company or whatever is actually the company that it claims to do, because it is cryptographically signed by the issuer that this is okay, and they did also sign this presentation from them. So I can all verify this via resolving that DID. And you can see now why SSI is so powerful here, because it's, in my opinion, a very, very good use case of two parties exchanging information, and both of them can't trust each other, and you need to independently verify if the information that you received is correct. And I think it's a very, very nice use case of SSI and DIDs as a whole. So what we now did is we generated something, transported it, and verified it at another place. And I believe what we could now do, that's also part of CARO. Let's say I'm an issuer, yeah? So I can now see here, I can see my issued credentials with this account, and we can see the credential that we issued to Philipp a couple of minutes ago. Let's say I'm an issuer and I want to say, oh, hey, you know what? I just noticed the company information that this guy gave me is wrong. I want to revoke this. I can do this as an issuer as well. And this is all part of this SSI, world again, that I can say, oh, wait a minute. Here, example company, example street 1 to 3 is maybe wrong. I want to submit a revocation for this. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. So I can revoke this. This is just a UI function for this. There are also like API endpoints that you can do this with in CARO. So I'm now issuing a revocation that is like transmitted to a contract, and then the contract is revoking it, and we are revoking it. Which, if I would now do this interaction again and try to generate and verify again, it would fail the verification, because it says, hey, actually what you're trying to do there can't verify the information from the other company because it's actually revoked. So I hope you understand my point that I'm trying to get across here, that I'm really stoked about this because it's such a good use case of SSI technology, of like, I just feel like this has been made for it. I don't know. Like, I think we can go into this at the last part and like in the questions part. But for me, like this pharmaceutical supply chain problem that we're solving with this is really, really well made for SSI. So I think if we would check now again, yeah, credential is revoked. And if I do like the whole roundup again now with generation and verification, we would get revoked events, which Philipp can now share, I guess. So I will end my screen share now as a service provider and demo issuer, and Philipp can show you how you can see that your information has been exchanged in your tenant as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Let's actually share. Quick second.
I think that's like the last part of this, and then I think we can go over to the questions part if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, let's go.
Yeah, and I think Lauritz has now shown you what is like, what happened behind the curtain, behind the scenes. And now as a customer, if I want to keep track of all those activities, I can just go into the VRS interactions part of CARO and have now an overview over two sections. One is called events and another is reports. But starting with events, you can see there are some events from like 2 hours ago, two of them here. And I guess those two here, I see 4:35, that's 5 minutes ago. Those are the ones that Lauritz has kicked off. So you can see outgoing, this is the generation that happened. Also via which VRS provider it was routed, like the ACME VRS that Lauritz logged in with. And you can actually see which credential was being sent, with the example street 123. And if you have a very good, mind, you can see this correlation UID 17, starting with 17. This is the thing that also Lauritz input on like the Swagger UI. And with the incoming, this is the verification that Lauritz did. You can see again the correlation UID. So we know those two events belong together because it's like one exchange, or it's like one half of an exchange if you are very particular. But those belong together. And you can see the credential that has been received to verify is again the same thing, example street 123.
It's actually a bad example which I did, because we just verified our own information. Nobody stops you doing that. A normal use case of this would normally be, I generate a presentation of my information, send it to some other party. This will trigger an incoming event at their place. And like me doing that will trigger them sending me their information. And so you always have a generation from my side, a verification from the other side at each tenant, so to say, that's trying to exchange information. I'm always sending something out for my information. I'm receiving something from someone else, and that's what I'm verifying. And the thing which we just demoed here, we verified our own information, which is probably not so smart, but I hope it gets a point across. Yeah.
Yeah, and the second party that Lauritz mentioned is this example company. So we only sent them our credential or our presentation of our credential, but they have actually not responded back with their presentation. So it's just a one-sided verification at the moment. But I think it's all right for this demo purpose. Yeah, you can see those two correlation UIDs, they belong together because it's one part of an interaction. And to make it easier to actually keep track of all this stuff, we have something called reports, VS reports. And in those, you can see again the correlation UIDs. If we click on that report, we can see those two events that happened with the same correlation UID are aggregated together into a report. And a report always has as well status. In that case, it is successful because sending off our credential was successful and verification was successful, of course. So this can as well be like incomplete or failed if something went wrong. Like for example, your credential was revoked, or the trusted issuer check failed because the ATP credential, the identity credential, was issued by somebody who was not authorized to do it. Yeah, and I think this is the way of, how do we as a user of CARO keep track of our VS events, how to make it easier to grasp with reports, and as well to keep track of what kind of identifiers I have and what credentials I have that are the core of everything in this case. Yeah, I think this is like the very basic demo. Of course, there's a ton more things to show, but I think this is the thing to get going and to understand what we do.
Yeah.
Let's get back actually to the presentation because there's one last slide.
I think it's the last slide is the resources, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
we've compiled together like a few links. We will be offering this whole presentation as a PDF, so you can get access to all the links and look through everything. Just CARO stuff, OCI stuff, and ERC 5539, which we just briefly mentioned, which is our own revocation registry mechanism to do credential revocation on Ethereum. We're very proud of it, and yeah, if you want to look into it, you can do that right over there. Cool, Lauritz. Did I forget something, or
I think that should be it. I think we can now go over to the questions part, which I think there will be many, because going through this in 20 minutes and explaining what DCSA is and especially understanding what VS is can be complicated. So don't be shy in asking questions.
Yes, it's Q&A time. So if you have any question, you can either use the chat or you indicate by raising your hand with the reactions, and you'll be given the floor to speak. Okay, Jake.
Hey, Lauritz. Hi, Philip. Really good work on the use case. I have a couple questions. So at the start, you mentioned creating the plugin for DIDCOM over Aries, right? I didn't fully understand how that was being used in CARO. Is that something that is used as part of the product, or is this just a separate thing that Spherity have done for other products?
So right now, the OCI does not dictate the use of areas or DIDCOM communication protocols for exchange of, for example, credentials, which would be a good use case for this, actually. We built this plugin as a preparation because we actually want to put this into the specifications, as we are like a big driver of the standards there. So right now we don't use them really, but the best case actually would be if you, for example, see XATP, another wallet provider, has some issuer implemented at their place, and now that issuer wants to issue something to our place, to our wallet, and that would be a perfect use case for Aries DID communication there, where they use like a credential exchange, I believe it is, or issue credential. No, actually, issue credential would be the correct flow, to use an issue credential to get the credential into another wallet. So that is like kind of the end goal, what we are trying to do here, to like in the end have a fully pluggable, not pluggable is probably not the correct word, but a easily connectable ecosystem where no matter where you are, like at what product offering, if you use us or some other wallet or some other issuer, it's completely irrelevant. You can use it at every place, and it makes it very easy for you to be compliant. So right now, that really we don't use it like in production, but we aim to do it once we have it in the standards and the wallet providers all catch up, and then we can do it, I guess. Yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it did. I had, if you don't mind, I have a specific question about your DIDCOM implementation, which is why I asked this initial question. So I actually spoke to Carsten around 2 weeks ago about Spherity, had an intro call. So I understand you haven't used Veramo's, the existing package that's there for Veramo DIDCOM, right? And from my understanding of my conversation with Carsten, that was because you guys were aiming to get to production. You had found some issues with Veramo's specific DIDCOM package, so you decided to write a different plugin. Now I'm getting a nod.
No, I'm not sure. Nah, I wouldn't say so. So what Veramo offers as a DIDCOM core package, like you have to see there's DIDCOM, and that package from Veramo works perfectly. Like double thumbs up. We used it. It was very, very nice. It is a little bit slow at times, so it takes some time to decode messages, especially large bodies, and like decode them. But I believe if we look into the code base, take a look here and there, we can do some pull requests and then probably figure out why. Maybe it's also us, I don't know, but that you have to imagine this, there's like DIDCOM, and I can send you DIDCOM messages easy, yeah? So I can send you like some plain text or whatever, and I encrypt it with my DID or with your DID, and you can easily decrypt it, and that's how DIDCOM works. On top of that, like what you need in a large body of standards, if like big corporations want to talk together, you can do DIDCOM, but then the question arises of how do we talk to each other? Do we have like a process flow? Like what happens if you are in the status of I'm waiting for a credential, but now you send me a request? That's where things get complicated, and that's what Aries is doing for us. So there are a lot of different standards that you can use for this. Like I think the Decentralized Identity Foundation also has their own standard for credential issuance. Vaki is like, all right, yeah, and Vaki and Aries, like we looked at all of them, but in the end, what you want to do is like you want to send some data with DITCOM in some process or in some state machine, and that's what Aries is doing for you. In the end, like all of these different standards don't give and take really much each other. It's like pretty much always the same. You have some process diagram of, I want to initiate some communication with you, so I send you a JSON message with initiate communication. Yeah, so that's, just imagine how TCP IP works, for example. You know, like I sent you something, you get a handshake, both parties agree, they exchange keys. Same deal here, and that is what we built as a plugin on top of the Veramo DITCOM implementation. So we leverage Veramo DITCOM, but we created a plugin for easily sending these structured messages and having them packaged in a process flow so that you can easily send messages in a certain state and receive them in a certain state, and make sure that like the state machine doesn't break. It's a, yeah, that's the world of DITCOM, especially state machine DITCOM out there is pretty complicated in that terms, because yeah, I believe if you would ask like Vaki nerds out there, they would probably hate on Aries. I believe a lot of people hate on Aries. So yeah, there's a lot of different pros and cons to this. So yeah, there's that.
Okay, no, thank you. That clears up a lot for me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, sub protocol. Yeah, Misha just mentioned in the chat that but you know, if I read sub protocol in the chat, like, isn't it like, for me, if I think about this semantically, it's like DITCOM. Like if you think about this like as a pyramid, for example, I feel like you have DITCOM at the base, you know, and then on top of this, I have some standard that regulates how I do DITCOM. So it's more like a, I don't know, on top standard. I don't know. Not sure how to think about this. Yeah, super protocol.
Great. So,
Oh, hey, yeah, sorry. I just want to say I found this super interesting as well. My question is, like, have you spoken to any key decision makers in the pharmaceutical industry? And if you have, do they buy into what the new identity model can do for them? And what are the main points of resistance, if any?
Very good question. So I'm not too much into like our sales process. This would normally be Martin here, yeah, and Georg, which are doing a lot of sales, and they are talking with a lot of, I guess, key decision makers, we want to call them. But from what I know, like to give my standpoint on this, is that there are like especially very big players like SAP and like big 3 pharma corporations. They are like fully buying into this. So they say, okay, we want to be compliant. And what you've now seen with our demo here is only a very, very small part of DSCSA compliance, which is PI verification or product information verification. There are like other even bigger use cases measured in revenue in billions that also need to be credentialized in the future, which, for example, is like order to cash, someone ordering something, you get it delivered, you know. And all of these companies are fully buying into this and saying, okay, we need to get credentialized like ASAP. And it's only a question of time for them right now. Because you can imagine billion dollar corporations. Like, you know, I sometimes complain about our processes in our company, but I believe if you have like a $1 trillion corporation, it's even harder to get things changed that are that drastically changed. But at least on the VRS side, which is, I guess, the driving factor for this, yeah, because the VRS is kind of dictating what you as a pharma company have to use. The VRS guide from the GS1, I believe it's GS1 Open Messaging Standard, it's called. It's now the version 1.3. It includes a new field called VC, and it's like a mandatory field in VRS communication. So the I think we should also put a link into this so people can read up on this. So it's the industry is definitely moving into full like SSI adoption here, with just what we showed, like identifiers, credentials. The only problem that I see though a little bit is replacing legacy systems. So if you look at this on a whiteboard, I would say you could easily say, you know, just use DIT communication for, like, you could replace VRS systems with this easily. Yeah, that's where suddenly, you know, this political nuances come in, and where people say, okay, we have like already very big revenues with this, so why would they give it up and replace it with DIT communication protocols? And also buying into some things which a DS1 is doing with like resolving company identifiers to something where I can reach someone, where also DIDs normally would be a good use case. So that's where like a lot of political game right now is going on. But I believe, just my personal opinion, I believe right now SSI has a very, very good foothold in this industry and will only continue to be adapted more.
Yeah, and I think like we have to be very clear here that this is not some like hot air that we are spreading here. Like we see actual like support and adoption of this technology. Like we see a lot of big companies are contributing to OCI. We see like, you know, for example, Novartis in here. We have like some customers that I don't want to name that are pretty big in the ecosystem, in the healthcare ecosystem, and you know that are actually telling us, hey, you know, we agree, this is the future. We want to use this. You're offering us a solution to something, you know, being compliant that nobody offered us before. You know, we see that. We also see like other bodies like the PDG mentioning credentialing as like one or the solution to being DCSA compliant as well. And I think this is like really showcases that if you're building an SSI product, it's not enough to just build something, but to build an ecosystem of people, of like companies, of people that trust each other, build together. And I think it pays off very, very bigly here because, you know, we see people actually contributing. People tell us, yeah, this is it. And they're paying as well with their money, and they're showing it that they support this and that they believe in it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Marcia.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, first of all, like awesome demo and awesome product. And before I go into kind of like some questions that I have, like, yeah, thank you for all the contributions you made back to Veramo while using it. It's the exact kind of model that we envisioned when we made Veramo open in the first place, where you know you'd have companies adopting it and then contributing back. So I'm very glad to see that that's actually working. So I wasn't able to understand from the demo itself, or maybe you mentioned it, but I missed it. Like, is this actually already in production, like in the supply chain? Do people use this live now?
That's a tricky question to answer. Depends on who you ask. So you have to see that like this. So customers, so we have customers on this product that are actively like paying, you know, for our solution. The question is only when do the VIS actually start asking our APIs for credentials? Because right now the industry is kind of in this phase of we still don't have to pay fees for this if we don't do credentialing, but they will soon. So everyone is, I wouldn't say like kind of panicking right now, but like I believe the deadline is end of the year when you need to start doing this, and like companies are picking this up, you know, and like starting to implement this. For us, customers are in production, and VIS systems that are implementing this. For us, this is production because we have people that are relying on us and, you know, implementing us right now. But I wouldn't say that right now we actually do generations and verifications with actual live product information as of right now. But there are like a lot of people that are actively integrating us at the time. Which is like only a matter of time, I guess, at the end of this year, when like they will hit the switch and then, you know, actual product verification requests will come in and that they will be routed. It's always a problem with, I guess if you would be a SaaS, you know, that sells some mail service or something, it's almost like always easier with customers. But the moment you start to deal with pharma companies, it's like everything is mega slow. That's like kind of the deal here.
Yeah, I get it. I was just curious, like if you have any kind of analytics numbers that you could share for this. Like I was curious how, you know, how a DID and VC solution, you know, like works out in the market, even if it's just starting out.
Good that you ask, because we have a live status bar that Philipp built on our CARO website that I really like to show off because it's super cool. If you go to caro.vc, you can actually see a live updated view of interactions would be generations and verifications that our platform did. So like people generating, verifying information. Identifiers is DIDs. Issued credentials is the amount of credentials that were issued through, like, for example, Legisym. And service providers are people that you can basically companies that provide some value for our customers. This is credential issuers, other VRS providers and stuff. So that's basically our live statistics on the platform right now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So just something to mention for, I think we're like almost at time, but just something to mention for the people in the community. This kind of like presentation that you just saw. So this is the kind of space that we are trying to create for presentations like this. So if you want to like showcase your product or ideas or however you interact with the SSI ecosystem, I think this is this is one of the places you should probably be showing it. And also we have some links set up on the Veramo repository to where you can also like post just like links to stuff that you're building in the SSI space. And I'm probably going to add that as something in the YouTube description that's going to be attached to this. But yeah, so thank you, Spherity folks, for this awesome demo. I have a lot of other questions, but they're like very technical and it's probably not worth me going into those. I will probably contact you privately for them.
I mean, I still have some time, so if you want to ask some questions after the meeting, feel free. I guess we can stay in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just from me as well. Like I really like giving, like us whole as a team. I think I'm speaking for Philip, for Francis as well that are in here right now, for Martin. It's like we really like giving back to the community as well. Like we are using Veramo for free, and we are using a lot of other open source dependencies as well. You just npm install them, and you never thank them for anything. So that's why I really like giving back, and I super like this so much. Like sitting here, showcasing something, seeing what others are building, and I think it's just a great space to be in. And super honored to sit here and talk about this and showcase the product that's powered by Veramo. Really, really like it. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, I mean, same goes for me. It's, I think, always super exciting to just show what you are building for all this time, and just see people being interested in asking questions, and it's pretty cool. So thanks as well for like inviting us to do this.
Thank you so much, Lauritz and Philipp. We're already at the hour mark, so thank you all so much for joining. It's been a very eye-opening session. I hope, just as Marcia said, that we would have more of such presentations in our next community call. So if you're interested to do this sort of thing, Nick already mentioned, even less polished presentations, just hit me up on Discord, Amarachi, or you can also send us an email, amarachi.oba@mesh.xyz. So I don't think there is any more questions or conversations. Marcia, you might have to schedule the call separately, because the moment I end this, I don't think you would still be here, and this call is recorded, right? So feel free to schedule a different call with Philipp and Lauritz. And yeah, so with this, we wrap up for the community call for this month. Thank you all so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for being here.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.